Single-player games. There's something magical about them, isn't there? Whether it's the story, the gameplay, the immersive worlds, the decisions that feel like they matter, or the characters you grow to love, single-player games offer experiences that are unmatched. But why? What makes them so special? What is it about these games that keeps us coming back to them even years after we play them? For me, it boils down to the stories. Single-player games have the power to tell stories in ways that no other thing can. Whether it's movies or books, they can tell amazing stories. But in video games, it's different. The player's role isn't passive. You're not just watching events unfold, you're an active participant. You're making the decisions. Your decisions often can have an effect on the overall ending of the game. However, the story of a game isn't the only thing that makes single-player games so enchanting. It's also the gameplay. For example, a single-player game like Portal can turn a simple mechanic like creating portals and walking through them and figuring out puzzles into a very rewarding and challenging experience. Every time you solve a puzzle, you get that hit of dopamine, and it makes you want to keep going. Then there's immersion. Games like The Witcher 3 don't just tell you a story, they drop you into a living, breathing world. Whether you're in the forests and the wilderness and the craziness of Velen, or you're in the bustling streets of Novigrad, you feel like you're there, like you are Geralt and you're a part of the Witcher world. The decisions you make can hold weight. They shape the world around you, like in Cyberpunk 2077. You're not just playing a character, you're defining their path, their relationships, and their legacy, and each choice you make has an impact on the ending of the game. And don't forget about pacing. Unlike multiplayer games that demand constant action, single-player games let you decide the tempo. You want to take your time to explore and slow things down a little bit, go for it. Want to rush through a main quest? You can do that too. Games like Harvest Moon taught me how to appreciate a slower, more deliberate experience. Lastly, another aspect that makes single-player games so great is the connection with characters. Whether it's Arthur Morgan in Red Dead Redemption and the connection you felt to him, or the complex relationship between Batman and the Joker and the enemies in the Arkham games, single-player games let you forge bonds with characters in a way that feels deeply personal. Whatever your reason is for loving single-player games, there's something undeniable about their ability to create unforgettable moments. But for me, this wasn't always the case. There were times when I was fully immersed in multiplayer games, whether I was grinding camos in Call of Duty, dropping into Warzone. This video isn't necessarily about how multiplayer games are bad, because I still like multiplayer games, I still play them. But more so, I want to talk about why single-player games are so captivating, and the story, and the choices you make, and the characters, and how there's nothing else like it. So as I've grown older, I've found myself drawn back to single-player games. They've become a way for me to escape, to reflect, and to experience stories in a way that I never thought was possible. So this video is my love letter to single-player games. I want to take you on a journey through my gaming history starting from childhood, where I played games like Harvest Moon, A Wonderful Life, Legend of Zelda, Wind Waker, and then I'll go through a bit of a multiplayer phase in my teenage years where I get caught in the COD cycle. So that'll be fun to talk about. And then lastly, my rediscovery of single-player masterpieces like Red Dead Redemption 2, The Witcher 3, or God of War. So let's dive in. Let me share with you the games that shaped me, the moments that stayed with me, and why I believe single-player games aren't just great, they're essential. So let's throw it all the way back to one of the first video games that I remember playing, and it had a huge impact on me. And that game is Harvest Moon, A Wonderful Life. This game is a GameCube game. That's what I had growing up. This game was, and still is, a masterpiece of simplicity and charm. At its core, it's a life simulation game where you get to take over an old, kind of run-down farm in a small, quiet little valley, and you get to build a life for yourself. Your goals are pretty straightforward, but open-ended. You get to choose what crops you grow, animals that you raise, and you get to build a relationship with the townspeople, and maybe even start a family if you're lucky. But it's not really like you're ticking boxes, which is what I really enjoyed about it. It's you just figuring out how you want to grow your farm. And it feels like it is your farm. It's something that you are creating. The gameplay loop in this game is simple but addictive. So basically, you plant crops, you water them every day, you feed your animals, your cows, chickens, maybe sheep. I know there's a horse in the game. That was a lifesaver. Because there's not really like a sprint mechanic. So you either walk everywhere or you get a horse, and it's much quicker. So thank goodness that they brought horses into the game. Some other things that you can do, there's a mine, which is kind of cool. You can mine for resources, upgrade your tools, and while you're doing all of this, you're also navigating the social aspect of the game, getting to know the quirky characters. And like I said, if you're lucky, you can maybe get one of them to fall in love with you and start a family. What makes Harvest Moon so special to me is its pace. It doesn't rush you. It doesn't make you feel like you need to do things in this certain order, or even you need to do things in this timeline. It lets you slow down and really enjoy the small, quiet aspects of growing a farm. It makes you feel like you're in control of everything, which is really cool. For little 10-year-old me, this game was pure magic. It was one of the first games that I ever played that I felt it was truly open-ended. There were no levels to beat, no bosses, no frustration. I mean, we'll get to that in a second, but there might have been one frustration just because I didn't understand the aspects of the video game. But overall, it was a nice, simple game that was fun, and it felt like I got to live in my own little world growing a farm. Now let's talk a little bit more about my experience with the game. Because it was one of the first video games that I'd ever played, I remember it was a learning experience. I had to learn how to do a lot of different things, even simple things I didn't really know how to do. Like, one of the first things that I remember is my cows were very angry with me. Basically, every time I saw them, they would groan at me or growl. I don't know what they were doing, but they were angry. They were like basically yelling at me that they needed food, and I didn't know how to feed them. Like, what even is a fodder dispenser? I had no idea. So basically, I would wander around. I couldn't figure out how to feed my cows. I kept trying to chop down more and more wheat, but I couldn't figure out how to actually harvest the wheat when all I really had to do was use the fodder dispenser, which I didn't know what that was. So again, over and over, the cows would yell at me. I'd try to milk them. They wouldn't give me any milk because I wasn't feeding them. Poor cows, I was really neglecting them. They were having a hard time with me. But eventually, after a while, I figured out that there was a fodder dispenser in the barn. I probably walked past it 100 times before I finally figured out how to feed the cows. So that moment of discovery was so satisfying. Again, that was like the main boss level, If this game was more like a linear game that had levels and bosses, this was the hardest boss to conquer. Well, maybe not the hardest. Hardest at the time. There's more coming up that I also had a hard time with. But when I figured this out and finally feeding the cows and being able to milk them, it really made me happy. I was a happy little boy. And I'm sure the cows were really happy too. The other aspect of Harvest Moon is not only just managing the farm, but it's also about building relationships. There was something so charming about getting to know the townspeople, learning their different routines, and forming connections. And boy, my 10-year-old heart, I was smitten. My first in-game crush was none other than Celia. So a little backstory about the game. You can get married and you can have a family. One of the things that you gain in the game is a blue feather, which is basically like an engagement ring. So you had to give a blue feather to the person that you wanted to marry in the game. And I think there are 3 options. There was Celia, Muffy, is that her name? Muffins? I don't know. And then the other one was Naomi, I believe. So like I said, my in-game crush was Celia. So I had my eyes on Celia. Apparently she's the easiest girl to marry in the game, but that didn't matter to me, or I didn't know at the time. I was smitten, like I said. That was the only thing I cared about. So I remember receiving the blue feather, and I was so excited. I'm like, oh yeah, like it's time. I'm gonna go propose to her in the most dramatic way that I could muster. And this is what happened. I proposed to her and she rejected me. And I remember my 10-year-old heart was absolutely crushed. I thought the game was over. I'm like, what's even the point of playing this game anymore? I was absolutely devastated. I didn't know what to do. But a little bit later on, maybe like a day in game later, a cutscene popped up where Celia's mom stepped in. She basically coerced Celia into marrying me. The mom comes up and she's like, hey, Celia, like, this guy's great. And then Celia's like, oh yeah, like, I really do love you. So that's kind of what happened. Maybe it was arranged marriage. Maybe the mom forced Celia to marry me because she felt pity on me. But either way, I was happy. You know, I got the girl. So that's all that mattered to me. It was such a roller coaster of emotions for my younger self, but it also made me appreciate how this game told its own unique little stories. And I think that's really cool, a cool concept to include, where even though I got rejected, I was still able to end up with Celia. So it all worked out for me, or at least that's what I thought. Turns out that I actually didn't get rejected. I think my 10-year-old brain was playing tricks on itself, and it turns out that Celia was just afraid to express her true feelings for me, and that's why Vesta came along to help Celia express those feelings. So that's all it was. Basically, Vesta was being a true wingman in the truest sense of the word. She was there for Celia. She's like, hey, you guys got something going. You got to get married. And that's what happened. I guess all of my trauma is a lie. I made it up in my own head. But anyways, that's what ended up happening. Over time, this game became my little virtual life where I was a farmer. And I finally got a horse, so I wasn't super slow and I could get to places quicker, which was nice. Overall, Harvest Moon, I loved every second of it. It didn't rush you, and it let you play at your own pace. For me, Harvest Moon was more than just a game. It was an introduction to the joy of slow-paced, immersive experiences. It taught me that games don't always need constant action or massive stakes to be meaningful, although it did feel like a massive stake at the time when I got rejected, but it ended up working out. So sometimes it's the quiet moments, feeding your cows, the simple things, planting crops, and just growing your farm. Those are the things that stay with you the longest. Let's move on to the next game. The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. Wind Waker wasn't just a game, it was a masterpiece, as are pretty much every one of these games that I'm talking about in this video. It was released in 2002 for GameCube, again another GameCube game. GameCube was honestly a goated console, if I say so myself. The thing with this Zelda game though, is that it was different from any Zelda game before it. It dared to break tradition in nearly every way, and it turned out that that was the best thing that they could do. To start, let's talk about art style. When fans first saw the bright, cartoonish, cel-shaded graphics, it sparked a lot of debate. Coming off the dark, realistic tones of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, many players thought this was a step backward, but that couldn't have been further from the truth. The visuals in Wind Waker are timeless. Even today, 2 decades later, the game still looks stunning. The vibrant colors, expressive characters, and fluid animations create a world that feels alive. It's a visual style that perfectly complements the game's sense of wonder and adventure. And then there's the ocean. Unlike previous Zelda games, which were landlocked, the Wind Waker introduced a sprawling open-world ocean. It wasn't just a gimmick, it was the heart of the game. Sailing across the waves, charting unknown islands, discovering buried treasure, it gave me the sense that I was exploring a living, breathing world. So after that brief introduction, if you couldn't have guessed already, The Wind Waker is my favorite Zelda game of all time. I got it as a birthday present, and I still remember booting it up for the first time. From the moment I stepped on the Outset Island, I knew I was in for something special. And again, remember, I was a child when I played this game. I mean, I was like probably 10. And for me, this game was absolutely terrifying. One particular moment that's etched into my memory forever, probably, is fighting my first bokoblin at the top of the mountain on Outset Island. I remember I was playing and I saw the girl, who we later find out is Zelda, or Tetra is her name. She was dropped into a forest on top of a mountain on Outset Island. So I went up there to go rescue her, but I had no idea what I was getting into. When I first saw my first bokoblin, I remember the music completely changed, the vibes. It just felt so tense. The atmosphere, the way the bokoblin moved, it was like a horror game for me. I remember being so scared and being petrified. I didn't want to die. I felt like if I died, I would die in real life. But because I had a sword, I was able to take him down, conquer my fears, and it was a small victory, but it hooked me on the game's combat. And from there, I knew I was in for something special. And then there was the Forbidden Fortress. This place was the definition of tension for me. Sneaking through the fortress without a weapon, avoiding the patrolling moblins from their lanterns, it was nerve-wracking. Every time I got caught and dragged off to my jail cell, my stomach dropped. I remember being so scared to be caught. Even though I knew I could escape from the jail, it was scary. It kept me on the edge of my seat the entire time. But that was the magic of Wind Waker. It wasn't just about fighting the monsters or solving puzzles. It was about the emotions that you could feel from the game. And the music. Let's talk about the music. The music in this game is absolutely incredible. I don't feel like any other game that I've played, I've gotten hooked to the soundtrack like this game. Honestly, anytime I hear it, I feel happy. Like I feel a sense of joy. Like, man, those were the good old days. And this music made me feel like it's hard to describe. It just brought energy and a sense of adventure to it. It's insane. It's so good. I remember Outset Island, it's just like a happy town. You know, that's the home that you can go back to. It felt so homey and just chill and fun. And then I remember the music of any time you're sailing on the open ocean. It feels like pure adventure. I love how the creators of this game really thought of everything. The music can be happy and upbeat and energetic when you're sailing on the ocean, but as soon as the rain comes, the vibe shifts and you can feel that. You can feel like, oh, things are kind of more tense now. And then if monsters start coming up, that is a different song entirely. I love the way they do it. It really feels like the game is changing as the different things happen. My favorite soundtrack in the game is probably Windfall Island. I know a lot of people really like Dragon Roost Island's soundtrack, which I really like that too, but I think overall Windfall is my favorite. I remember the first time I went to it, again, just such a happy theme. It feels like home. I know Outset is the home, but Windfall felt like the place where I needed to be. Windfall was full of secrets, and it's funny because it's not a very big island. I think it's one of the smaller ones, but it has so much going on inside of it. And again, the music, it feels so happy. It feels like sunshine. For me, I love the season of summer. That's definitely my favorite season. I love being out in the sun and playing sports, and even if it's just a walk around the block. I love seeing the blue sky and the warm sun on my face. So I feel like that is kind of why I love Windfall so much, because that's what it felt like. It feels like summer, like a warm place that you can go to. It has a beach. It has so much fun things going on. So that's ultimately why I love the soundtrack of Windfall. Another great soundtrack, of course, is Dragon Roost Island, a masterpiece in its own right. Even now, just thinking about it, these songs are embedded into my brain and memories as nostalgia. Anytime I hear any of them, I'm like, dang, those were the good old days. And I don't really think it was the good old days. I think it was more so the game was so amazing and the music. I don't feel like I've played a game where the music has had this much of an impact on me, but that's what I'm really trying to get across. The music is so good in this game. I've seen a lot of things online where people will talk about the music of Breath of the Wild, and I think the soundtrack is fine in Breath of the Wild, but I don't think it even compares to Wind Waker. I feel like it's a lot more low-key in Breath of the Island, a lot more chill and not as upbeat. So maybe that's why I don't like it as much, but that's how I feel. I feel like Wind Waker does such a good job of music. I didn't realize how important it was to me, but thinking about it, I feel like it really sets the tone of the game, and it can play with your emotions and make you feel happy or sad or distressed. It can have that effect on you. I think they just did such a good job with it. Moving on from music, as much as I'd hate to, no Zelda game would be complete without its dungeons, and the Wind Waker delivered. Each dungeon felt like a giant puzzle box with every room in it challenging me to think creatively. I played it fairly recently, since I was a child, and it feels like it is a lot easier than I remember, but when I was playing it the first time, I remember being stuck. I remember I got stuck so many times. There's moments where I'd wander in circles and make my way around the dungeon and not really know where I was going or what I was supposed to do. So yeah, I'd sometimes get frustrated. But when I was finally able to figure it out, that feeling of accomplishment was so worth it. One particular moment for me that stands out as one of the coolest things in the game is when you finally get the Master Sword and you pull it from its pedestal. The build up to that scene was incredible, and when you finally hold the blade, I just feel like it infused me with so much more confidence. It was like a symbol of power and growth. Obviously, I've played the game up to that point, and I feel like throughout all the journeys and all the different things I've had to do, getting the Master Sword felt like a crowning achievement at the time, and I felt like I'd be totally fine for the rest of the game. I remember right after getting the Master Sword, when you go back up the stairs, all of the monsters had come to life. They're frozen in time, but basically when you activate the Master Sword, they all come back to life, and you have to go fight them. And I remember not being scared. I'm like, I got the Master Sword. This is gonna be cake. So I remember going up the stairs and taking down all of the knights, all of the monsters up there, and I wasn't scared. And I think that was a really cool moment that they built. And again, the music, it's so good. I love the battle theme in this game. It just feels so adrenaline pumping, and I feel like it does instill you with more confidence. That whole scene of getting the Master Sword is one of the most memorable moments that I have in a game, where I felt like I was on top of the world. There's probably so much more I could talk about this game, but overall, Wind Waker is an outstanding game that I won't ever forget about. It taught me about courage, exploration, and the joy of discovery. It was a game that could terrify me one moment and then fill me with confidence and wonder the next. Years later, this game will always hold a special place in my heart. I don't think any other Zelda game that comes out will ever top this one for me. So even now, this game is definitely worth it. If you haven't played Wind Waker, I highly, highly recommend you try it. Not only is it my favorite Zelda game, but it is one of the best games of all time. So that's going to be hard to top, but let's talk about another masterpiece of a game, Luigi's Mansion. My first thoughts about Luigi's Mansion is that it scared me. Remember, I was a kid, so yeah, this was a scary game. To introduce the game, let's talk about how Luigi's Mansion was made. Originally, it was revealed as a tech demo at Nintendo Space World 2000. It was designed to showcase the graphical power of the GameCube. But that was just a simple demonstration that evolved into the full-fledged game that would introduce us into some of the most iconic characters in the Mario universe, which is kind of crazy. I didn't know this until I was making this video, but for the first time, we were introduced to King Boo and Professor E. Gadd, that dope dude that gives Luigi the vacuum, which I had no idea that this was the first time that King Boo was introduced, but I guess it makes sense because it's a game about ghosts. So, just a quick little tip for you. So that's just the beginning. Luigi's Mansion was eventually created, and it had amazing reception. Everybody loved it. It's an amazing game. So let's talk about it. What is the game about? It's pretty simple, Luigi wins a mansion in a contest that he didn't remember entering, and when he arrives, he's expecting a prize, but he finds himself trapped in the creepy, ghost-infested house, and he can't find his bro Mario. So basically it's the perfect setup for a spooky, fun adventure that lets Luigi be the main character in a game for the first time. So instead of your typical Mario game of jumping on turtles, collecting coins, Luigi is on a on a scary adventure to capture ghosts and explore a haunted mansion. But in order for the developers to get to that end point, it wasn't always like that. Originally, they had levels that were based on dollhouses or other buildings with lighting and shadows playing a major role, which, they kind of do in the end, but they couldn't figure out the setting. So as the concept continued to evolve, the team wanted to create a more atmospheric setting, and they ended up on an American-style haunted mansion. And Luigi was chosen as the protagonist to keep the experience fresh and original, for Luigi to shine. The gameplay with Luigi's Mansion is different from anything that Nintendo had done with the Mario universe before. He was on an adventure with his Poltergust 3000 vacuum that sucks up ghosts, solving different puzzles, and in the end, saving Mario. As Luigi discovers new places, he has to suck up all the ghosts in that area, and basically as he progresses through the mansion, sucking up all the ghosts, each part that you finish, all the lights turn on and it feels happy again, because when there are ghosts that are still present, it's dark and kind of scary, and there's jump scares, and it scared me as a little kid playing this game. Let's talk a bit more about the music in this game. The music is incredible. The soundtrack is one of the game's most memorable elements. It captures the eerie, kind of creepy vibes perfectly. It does a great job of balancing the tension that you feel as you're exploring a haunted mansion, which is exactly what it should be. But then luckily, if it weren't for this, I don't know how I would do it as a little kid, but every now and then you get to call EGAD on your little cell phone device thing, and the music shifts to kind of like a like, that was terrible. Here's what it actually sounds like. Every time I got one of these calls, I would always think, oh yay, like there's a little break from all the scary and dreariness of the mansion. I wouldn't say that this music is better than Wind Waker, because I frankly don't think any soundtrack is better than Wind Waker's soundtrack, but it is very good. The soundtrack does an amazing job of keeping you on your toes, and then anytime there's a jump scare, it literally would sometimes startle me, where I would sit straight up and basically jump out of my chair because I was scared. So yeah, the music is incredible. I wouldn't expect anything else. And if we continue on with the story, basically at the very end, after you suck up all the ghosts in the mansion, the final boss is King Boo, and you beat him, and you get Mario back. So, wahoo! It's me, Mario! And that's it. That's the game. The thing about this game is that it was a launch title for GameCube, because they wanted to start out with a banger, apparently. So it really set the tone for a new kind of adventure in the Mario universe. This is something that was going against everything else that they had done before, and it was an amazing idea. It introduced new characters, fresh gameplay mechanics, and the atmosphere that hadn't really been captured before in a Mario game. I don't think they've ever had kind of this scary story. Luigi's Mansion will always stand out in my eyes as an amazing game, not only in just the Mario franchise, but period. I remember I came back to this game when I was older, and it was still a lot of fun, and it actually got my younger brother interested, and he went and beat it all by himself. So it was a proud older brother moment. What really stands out to me about Luigi's Mansion is that it finally gave Luigi a time for him to shine. This was his big moment, and I think that's cool that they gave him his own standalone game, because he was always kind of seen as, like, I don't know, the kind of quirky, kind of weird, scared, cowardly, I would even dare say. So it's cool that he got his own game and he wins. He's the master. He sucked up all those ghosts and he was able to be the hero, which was super cool, you know? If you think about it, it's like maybe the weird, cowardly person in real life is the hero, you know? Think about it. Think about it for a second. In the end, it's a game that still resonates with me today, not just because of the gameplay and all of the elements that go into the game, but because of how it broke new ground and how it made Luigi into the hero. We're about to reach the point in my life where everything changed as I transitioned from my childhood into my preteen and teenage years, and my relationship with gaming began to transform. Epic single-player games that I had played growing up had really made me love video games, but as I grew older, gaming was becoming something more social and more competitive. I yearned for the competitiveness of games. It wasn't just about the games themselves anymore, it was about the shared experiences, the rivalry with my brothers and friends, and the thrill of teaming up to claim victory. For me, this new era of gaming began with one of the greatest Call of Duty games of all time, Call of Duty 3. Alright, I know. A lot of people hate this game. They think it's terrible. But for me, it was awesome. I loved this game. So let's talk a little bit about it. It was released in 2006, and it marked a pivotal moment because it was the first game that Treyarch was introduced into the Call of Duty franchise. Yeah, that same Treyarch that we all know and love today. Call of Duty 3 was still set in World War II, like the two previous games before it, and this game focused on the Allied campaign to liberate France during the Normandy breakout. The game introduced a number of new mechanics, including the ability to use vehicles in multiplayer and also hand-to-hand quick-time events in the campaign. These additions to the game were divisive. Some people hated them, some people loved them, but regardless, it really showed Treyarch's ambition to try out new things and to push the series in different directions. So let's talk about why I love this game so much. While I wouldn't consider it the best Call of Duty game of all time, it is definitely one of my favorites. So let's start with the campaign. The campaign was my first taste of Call of Duty storytelling, and I thought it was incredible. Looking back, I probably didn't have the most mature taste in games at the time, but I was fully immersed. Every firefight that I ran into, I felt like it was truly life or death, and the quick time events, man, they terrified me. Every time I ran into a QuickTime event, I would mash those buttons as quickly as I possibly could because it felt like if I didn't, the game would be over. So you could say that this game had great immersion because I was definitely immersed. So hey, Call of Duty was cooking with this one. At least for me, they were. I don't think I ever fully understood the story of the campaign, but the cinematics and the levels, I thought they were all unique and fantastic, and I genuinely enjoyed playing through the entire campaign. Looking back, I really don't remember too much about the campaign other than it was hard for me. I remember dying a lot of times, but I didn't give up and I fought my way through the entire thing. And in the end, this was a great introduction for me into the Call of Duty franchise. I had a great time learning about the mechanics of the game, improving my skills, and even feeling a connection with the characters. I think I only remember one guy from the campaign, Private Huxley, but he was dope. So hey, they did something right.
Let's go! I'm advanced that tank.
And that's about all I've got for the campaign. Now, let's jump into my pride and joy of this game, multiplayer. However, multiplayer for me was a little bit different from what other people might have experienced. At the time, I didn't have access to Xbox Live, so all of my multiplayer experience was split screen with my friends or brothers. I remember all of us crammed in the same room looking at a tiny screen split into 4 different mini screens on one TV, and TVs were smaller back then, so I don't even know how we could even see anything, but I remember having so much fun. One of the big reasons why I loved multiplayer so much was the vehicles. This is where I think Call of Duty 3 was really ahead of its time because vehicles didn't really come back into Call of Duty until probably Warzone. I really can't think of a different Call of Duty that had vehicles. I feel like Warzone really was the next one that had them. So hey, if you like vehicles and you didn't play Call of Duty 3, you were missing out. And man, I really miss it. I remember the first time that I played Modern Warfare 2 after playing Call of Duty 3, And once I realized that they didn't have vehicles in multiplayer, I was so upset. And I truly didn't want to play it because of the fact that they didn't have vehicles. It's kind of funny to me to think about that now and reflect on how much vehicles really had an impact on me, but they really made a big difference, and that's what I was looking forward to. So yeah, from my perspective, Call of Duty 3, way better than Modern Warfare 2. Of course, I'm sure that's a very highly shared opinion among everyone else, so there's no way that that will cause any issues or arguments in the comments. Alright, I've talked a bit about vehicles, so let's talk about why they were so good. Call of Duty 3 was a game where you could jump into a tank, you could take control of a Jeep's mounted machine gun, or you could also speed around on a motorcycle with a sidecar, because, you know, it's World War II, and that was awesome. I really liked the tanks because they were so much fun. You felt truly invincible. They were a bit slow and bulky, so it was kind of hard to get around the maps, but it really made you feel like you were unstoppable. And for me, there was nothing quite like hunting down my brothers one by one, leaving chaos wherever I went. But as much as I loved being a tank, there was something equally thrilling about taking a tank down. The bazooka or Panzerschreck was a beast of a weapon. It took multiple shots to destroy a tank, but when you finally watched it erupt in flames, that was one of the most satisfying moments in the game. I also really loved riding around in a motorcycle. The motorcycle was dope because it was the fastest vehicle in the game, and that meant one thing. I just wanted to drive around and run people over. You have to remember, this was my first introduction to a Call of Duty game, so I wasn't very good at the game yet, and neither were any of my friends or brothers, so it was hard for them to shoot me out of the motorcycle. I remember there were a few times when I was driving a motorcycle about to run someone over, and they would shoot me and snipe me out of the seat right before I got them, but then they still got run over. Those were some of the great times that we had playing this game. Another fun activity that my brothers and friends liked to play was Cash Cab. Cash Cab was a TV show where there was a cab driver who would pick someone up, and while he was driving them to their destination, he would ask them trivia questions. And if they got 3 strikes, they'd be kicked out of the cab, even if they weren't at their destination yet. So that's the game that my brothers and my friends like to play in Call of Duty. But of course, since it's Call of Duty, you can't really just kick someone out. You had to shoot them, obviously. Things like that in games where we could use our own imagination, and by using the mechanics of the game, we could make our own little mini games out of it. I feel like you couldn't really do that as well on Xbox Live because I feel like everybody's a sweat or a tryhard and they just want to kill you because that's the main objective of the game. But sometimes making up your own games and using your imagination was so much better. So that's probably a big proponent why I really loved playing this game so much, because I didn't have to deal with online multiplayer and got to have so much fun with my brothers and friends playing locally. Another cool aspect about this game is the attention to detail that it had. The weapons in this game were historically accurate, and each faction had its own arsenal. The Allies had iconic weapons like the M1 Garand and the Thompson, and the Axis had weapons like the Kar 98 and the MP40. I think this is a really cool feature. It added a layer of authenticity to the game, and it made it feel more grounded in the history and setting of the game. Being a World War II game, it really felt like that. Even though this was a cool aspect, this didn't really stick around in later Call of Duty titles. Probably because everybody just wanted to use any gun that they wanted, but hey, I thought this was a cool idea. It was a fun way to connect you to the setting of the game. And with that said, the weapons seemed historically accurate as well. You couldn't just add any attachment that you wanted, like a fancy red dot sight or all these other unique attachments. So I think that's what set it apart. It was more of like a true military sim game versus what we get now with games being more arcade-like. So I still think it's a cool aspect. Even if they were to introduce it in a newer Call of Duty now, I'm sure there would be so much hate around it. Overall, Call of Duty 3 is often considered one of the weaker entries in the franchise. So that's why I wanted to talk about it, because I don't feel like it gets very much positive feedback at all. Even if I am blinded by the good times that I had playing it, I will always remember it fondly. From the chaotic split-screen battles, the thrill of driving a tank, running people over with a motorcycle, this game was my first step into the world of multiplayer gaming, and it left a lasting mark on me. Call of Duty 3 may not have been perfect, but it was a game worth playing. This was the game that started the multiplayer phase of my life. So I can say from the bottom of my heart, this game truly is and will always be one of my favorite Call of Duty games. Because I had so much fun playing it, it led me directly down the path into the next game that I'll talk about, Black Ops 1. Let's rewind back to 2010. The Xbox 360 was king, Mountain Dew and Doritos were basically gamer fuel, and Call of Duty Black Ops had just dropped. This was the first game where I had Xbox Live, and I got introduced to the world of online multiplayer. But what made Black Ops so special? Was it the campaign, the zombies, or was it the multiplayer? For a lot of people, it was all of the above. So let's dive deep into Black Ops, and I'll share my journey with the game. To be honest, I wasn't very good at the game because, hey, this is my first introduction into Xbox Live, and I was bad. I think I ended up having around a 0.7 KD, so, absolutely rock solid, amazing. But even when I was getting crushed in multiplayer, I was still having the time of my life. Let's start with the campaign. Treyarch went all out with this one. Set during the height of the Cold War, you play as Alex Mason, a CIA operative caught in the web of covert missions, brainwashing, and conspiracies. The game opens with Mason being interrogated, and one of the things I'll probably always remember about this game, if nothing else, is the guys saying,
"The numbers, Mason. What do they mean?"
Probably one of the most iconic lines in gaming history, and it really sets the tone for a campaign that's as mind-bending as it is action-packed. While I don't remember the storyline of the campaign very much, I do remember the numbers, Mason, and I also remember this clip where you rappel down the side of a building and kick through the window like an action hero. Yeah, I'll probably always remember that. I think it was part of a trailer originally, but then actually getting to do it in-game made it all the more worth it. The last part of the campaign that I'll talk about is Viktor Reznov. I really don't remember too much about him. I just remember there being some kind of twist ending, so that's probably about it. But yeah, even though the campaign itself didn't really leave a lasting impression, at least on the storyline, because I can't even remember what happened, I remember it being a lot of fun, and so that was enough to get me hooked into the game and the mechanics and the guns, and it made me crave for more. Next, let's talk about zombies.
We need to bring right to this dark place.
If you didn't play zombies in Black Ops, what were you doing? This was my first game where I played zombies. I know they had World at War, so I missed out on that, but this was my introduction to zombies. For a lot of players, zombies became bigger than campaign or multiplayer, and it's pretty easy to see why. The iconic map, Kino der Toten. It was basically the only map that I got to play since I didn't have access to DLC, and my mom would probably think that that was weird if I ever wanted to buy additional maps in games. I don't think that concept was very big, so I don't think I could have convinced my mom to do that. So with that, I was just stuck to Kino and 5. But even with just those two maps, Zombies was a lot of fun. The abandoned theater of Kino, the creepy atmosphere, and the constant pressure of trying to survive made every game feel like an adrenaline rush. Around this time, I also started watching YouTubers like Syndicate. That's basically where I learned to train zombies, because I used to just sit in a corner and hopefully I didn't have to reload or run out of ammo and just kill zombies that came at me until I died. And that was all I knew how to do. But this game was my introduction to zombies, where I learned the mechanics of the game and how to last a lot longer throughout the rounds. And can we talk about dog rounds? I know they're probably not that significant to a lot of people, but they really freaked me out back then, even though they're ridiculously easy now. I remember being terrified every time a dog round came by because I feel like I died a lot during dog rounds, and maybe it was because I was just sitting in corners the entire time, even though that's probably not even a hard strategy to do in dog rounds. Maybe I was just bad. I don't know. I mean, judging by my KD ratio, I guess that kind of explains my issues with dog rounds. Overall, Zombies was a lot of fun, but it wasn't the place where I spent the most time. The game mode that definitely took the cake for me was multiplayer. Multiplayer was where the magic happened for me. The maps, absolute masterpieces. Let's go through a few. Nuketown, what more can you say about Nuketown? It's iconic. It's been remade in basically every single Treyarch Call of Duty game, so it's hard to beat that. But this was the introduction of Nuketown. And I'm pretty sure Treyarch had to change the rules about map voting whenever Nuketown came up, because originally, I believe, if Nuketown ever came up, you could vote for previous map over and over and over again, and it never went away. So they had to introduce that mechanic that made it so that you could only vote for the previous map one time, and then it would clean those out, and you would have to vote for 2 different maps. Imagine that. Nuketown made them have to change the mechanics of map voting because people wanted to play it every single time. The other maps that I remember playing were Firing Range, Summit, Hanoi, Havana. Each map had its own identity, and they all flowed so well. So whether you're rushing, holding objectives, or just trying to survive like I was, every map felt balanced and fun to play on. But what kept me coming back? A lot of different things, but let's start with the grind. Unlocking camos. This game felt really impactful when you got to unlock different camos and try to go for gold. I was never able to make it to gold camo because I joined the game kind of late. I think Modern Warfare 3 was already out when I started playing Black Ops, so I didn't have the time or even the skills because I wasn't that great. But I thought it was so cool every time I saw someone with a gold gun. I thought they were the best player in the world. Another cool aspect that I really liked in this game was pro perks. I thought pro perks were a cool mechanic that Treyarch introduced to try to increase the skill gap in the game. I remember grinding out for Sleight of Hand Pro, Ghost Pro, Steady Aim Pro. Each one gave you a real edge in the game if you put in the work. I thought it was a cool mechanic because not everyone would go for pro perks, they would just use the base perks. But the additional features that each pro perk introduced, I feel like made it really worth it to try to go for them. For example, Sleight of Hand Pro made it so that you basically aim down sight super fast. You couldn't be sprinting when you did it, you had to just either be walking or standing, but it made a huge difference and you could win a lot more gunfights. Some of my other favorites are Ghost Pro and Steady Aim Pro. Steady Aim Pro was the perfect one for rushing. Steady Aim Pro allowed you to aim super fast after sprinting, which is what I was always doing. You already know I had that AK-74U in hand, running and gunning my way throughout each map. Ghost Pro was a really cool one as well because it made it so that your name above your head wouldn't appear for enemies. So you could kind of blend into the environment, or maybe even sometimes, if you're lucky, blend into the enemies because they might just think that you're a teammate of theirs because they don't see the red name over your head. So that was a really cool advantage that it gave you. And you can't forget about Marathon Pro, which let you sprint forever, or Lightweight Pro, which got rid of fall damage, which, could come in handy every now and then. Moving on to the kill streaks. Legendary. SR-71, Napalm Strikes, Chopper Gunner, and Dogs. Man, dogs in this game were so cool. I feel like they were such an amazing kill streak. I remember the fear that came into my body every time I heard the announcers say, "Enemy dogs incoming," because I knew I was gonna die. Like, there was nothing I could do. I feel like no matter what I did, I would always die multiple times to the dogs. So sure, call them overpowered or whatever you want, but they were an awesome kill streak. And now, let's talk about the gameplay. I enjoyed the gunplay a lot in this game, still probably my favorite out of any Call of Duty game. I think the time to kill was perfectly balanced in this game. It didn't feel like it fully relied on whoever shot first would get the kill. It felt like there were real gunfights where you could outwit or win a gunfight with greater skill. It wasn't fully dependent on whoever had a better internet connection or who shot first. That can't be said for most other Call of Duty games. The time to kill felt like it was way too fast after playing Black Ops. I'm looking at you, Ghosts. The way I would explain the difference between time to kill and Black Ops compared to other Call of Duties is that it felt like you could get away from gunfire by running into a building at the last second or running around a corner without dying. Maybe get shot a few times, but it felt like you could escape. However, in Call of Duty now, you're dead in the blink of an eye. It's so fast, and there's nothing you can do. You can't talk about gameplay without mentioning the weapons in this game. Man, these guns were iconic. The FAMAS, AUG, AK-74U with rapid fire, of course. The Commando, the Galil, the Caparis. Okay, that one probably wasn't as iconic, but that was the one that my brother used the most. I feel like the recoil was balanced. Again, the time to kill was a huge factor in this game for me, and the guns felt amazing with it. Now, I want to share a little bit more about my pride and joy in multiplayer, which was capture the flag. I played this game a lot with my older brother. We played split screen on Xbox Live, and we would go to town and capture the flag. The game plan was fairly simple. I would use an AK-74U with Steady Aim Pro, and my older brother would use the Caparis with rapid fire, which made it the fastest shooting gun in the game. He really liked it. It would basically empty an entire clip in maybe like 1 second. So those were the guns that we would use. Capture the flag was the best game mode because it required a lot of strategy around being both aggressive to try to capture the enemy's flag, but also being conservative enough to make sure your own flag wasn't taken. You had to really work as a team and rely on teammates to help you get important kills, but you can't always rely on your teammates. My brother and I had to rely on each other, where he would be the aggressive one and go into the enemy's base and steal the flag, and I'd play defense. This was a lot of fun for me because I had to learn the maps really well, what places to hide in, what places to place my claymores. Okay, yeah, you might hate me, claymores suck, but hey, I was there to win, so I had to do whatever it took. I also had to get familiar with the routes that people took in case someone did take the flag. I could try to predict where they were going to go with it. And hey, I wasn't only defending the flag the entire time. I had my fair share of being aggressive in capturing the flag. I really wish Capture the Flag was more popular in newer Call of Duty games. It's such a fun game mode that really does make you think and strategize and come up with a plan of what you want to do and where you want to go and what lanes to defend and what lanes you should attack, or should you push all your team in this direction? Should you split your team up and have some defend and have some attack? It's such a fun game. I don't know why it's not more popular. I feel like I need to make a game or something just about Capture the Flag because it's so fun. People need to see that. So if you're listening to this, give Capture the Flag some love. In whatever multiplayer game you play, try out Capture the Flag. We gotta start a movement or something, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, that's about all I've got for Black Ops. Yes, this game was very nostalgic for me. I remember the great times I had playing with my brother on split screen on Xbox Live, Capture the Flag. It was so much fun. So that's it for Black Ops. It was the perfect introduction to online multiplayer for me, and it made me so stoked for Black Ops 2. 2012. This was peak gaming for me. It was the year that, of course, Black Ops 2 came out. I'm talking about late nights, grinding multiplayer with friends, pulling off ridiculous zombies runs, and even, some dabble in the campaign, I'll say. If you didn't get to experience Black Ops 2 when it was in its prime, I'm sorry. This was the greatest time to play Call of Duty out of any other time in history. This game had aura, something that just hit differently from the moment you loaded it up. That multiplayer music, oof, man, it does something to you. I don't know what it is, but it's doing something. The best part about everything, this game delivered. So let's dive in and talk about why Black Ops 2 is still, to this day, one of the greatest shooters of all time. So some quick background. Black Ops 2 dropped on November 12th, 2012, and it was massive. You want to know what else is massive? It was Treyarch's follow-up to Black Ops, and this time they took some big swings. It was the first Call of Duty to introduce a branching storyline in the campaign, a futuristic setting with advanced tech, and let's not forget, League play and multiplayer. That was huge. Critics loved it. Even the zombies mode got a ton of attention for expanding its scope and creativity. For fans, though, this game was more than just a polished Call of Duty. It felt like Treyarch was in their golden age. They were pushing boundaries, and not only that, they were delivering. And for me, I became obsessed with this game. So let's start with the campaign. I'll be honest, maybe I just have a bad memory, but I don't really remember too much about the storyline of the campaign, but I do remember the vibe. Treyarch split the narrative between 2025 and flashbacks to the Cold War era, which tied in the original Black Ops characters. In this game, you play as David Mason, the son of Alex Mason, and the story revolves tracking down Raul Menendez, one of the franchise's best villains, IMO. This guy wasn't just evil, he had depth, man. He had motivations and certain charisma that made him stand out. I can't stop talking about campaign unless I mention talking about the Strike Force missions. Oh man, okay. This was Treyarch trying something new. They gave you control over these AI troops in this real-time strategy style missions. But okay, this might have been their one miss in this game. I didn't love it. It was kind of terrible. If you like those missions, first of all, why? And second of all, I mean, good for you. Good for you for liking it. I don't really know what Treyarch was trying to do here. I mean, they're trying something new, but this ain't it. The coolest part of the campaign, though, was the choices. For the first time ever in a Call of Duty campaign, your decisions actually affected the outcome of the story. Whether it was saving a certain character, choosing to kill a character, or succeeding a certain mission objective, it all added up to multiple endings. And it gave the campaign some replayability, which isn't something you can say about Call of Duty normally. So that's it for campaign. Let's talk about zombies. Black Ops 2 revolutionized zombies. This was the first game where I really got hooked. I have so many memories of staying up till 5 a.m. with my friends over summer break, grinding Die Rise out of all maps for some reason. Yeah, I know Die Rise isn't considered a top tier map, but I had so much fun with it. You know, navigating the elevators, jumping across buildings, trying not to die, and using the Sliquifier. That wonder weapon was dope. Also, this was the game where I learned about Easter eggs. I didn't even know about them in the original Black Ops. So when I got to play Mob of the Dead and build the plane, incredible. When I got to get the Hell's Retriever and then not only that, but upgrade it to Hell's Redeemer, man, that was so satisfying. Mob of the Dead was on a whole other level, and it really showed how much effort Treyarch was putting into zombies at this point. Like I said, man, they were swinging and they were hitting. Zombies was very experimental in this game. And then there's maps like Buried with its time bombs and Origins with the staffs. It really took this game to new heights. With all of that said, there is still one game mode that stood above the rest, and that was multiplayer. This was the heart and soul of Black Ops 2 for me, and it's where I spent most of my time. And also, this was the first Call of Duty where I finally had a positive KD ratio, a 1.05. I mean, barely, but hey, it counts. Something that really drew me into this game were the camos, and I could finally go for them. I liked how the camos were earned through challenges like headshots rather than prestiges, because I feel like it added more challenge to actually getting the camos. If they just tied the camos to a prestige level, then I feel like a lot more people would get them. But by making it gun challenges, it made it a lot harder and a lot more rare, which made it more enticing for me to go get them. So I was committed. I was ready to do whatever it took to get diamond. And the challenges were brutal. 100 headshots, plus all the additional challenges that come after, like long shots, hipfire kills, getting a certain amount of bloodthirsty medals. It was tough, and it took me a long time. But with that said, I ended up getting diamond for not only one class of weapons, but two. I got them for assault rifles and SMGs. And to this day, I feel like those are still some of the best looking camos in Call of Duty history. They're beautiful. Now let's talk about the maps. This game had some of the best maps. Let me just read some of these and see how you feel about them. Raid, Nuketown, Studio, aka Firing Range, Grind, Standoff, Hijacked, Slums, Drone. Okay, maybe not Drone. But hey, I like to snipe on that map. It was kind of fun. These maps were so fun, especially Raid. Raid could be considered as one of the greatest maps of all time. I love that map. Raid had one of the most iconic openings of the map in every multiplayer game, when everybody just pulled out a sniper, ran as quickly as they could to the middle of the map where you could see across the courtyard, and just try to snipe as many people as you could, go for a collateral or something crazy. Yeah, that was awesome. I feel like it didn't work out for me very often, but when it did, it made it all worth it. So I had to keep doing it. Even though I'd die most of the time, I had to chase that high every time. Man, I sound like an addict. Well, I probably was addicted to this game. Pretty sure I was. Alright, let's talk about the guns. Absolute bangers. MSMC, PDW, AN94, M8A1, the Scorpion.
Scump is getting cross-map kills with the Scorpion!
Even the shotguns, the Remington. These are still some of the most satisfying guns that I've ever used in Call of Duty. Black Ops 2 also forced me to learn how to play claw grip. I guess it didn't really force me. I chose to because I wanted to be like the pros, and I saw them always doing crazy jump shots and drop shots. And I couldn't really afford a scuff that had buttons on the back so that you could map certain buttons like jumping or crouching. So I had to learn how to play claw, which is using my index finger to press the buttons. It was kind of uncomfortable, but I guess my hand just kind of got used to it. But hey, that is what I was willing to do to try to get an edge in this game. Another thing that I loved about this game was league play. League play was so much fun, and I feel like this was probably the best version of ranked or league play that Call of Duty ever did. And it was their first try. Crazy how they got it perfect on their first try, and it just went downhill from there. My friends and I would grind ranked matches, and I started watching pro tournaments and paying attention to the pros and getting involved in that community. This was peak competitive Call of Duty. The energy, the community, the vibes. This was definitely the golden age, and I thought it would just continue to go up from there, but I feel like it didn't. I feel like it really peaked at Black Ops 2, and it won't ever be that good again. Black Ops 2 wasn't just another COD. It was a perfect mix of innovation, and Treyarch nailed everything that they tried. Whether it was multiplayer, the camos, the guns, zombies, the campaign, this game did everything right. Black Ops 2 is a time capsule for me of some of the best memories I've ever had while gaming. And Call of Duty has had its ups and downs since then, but I don't think it will ever reach the heights that Black Ops 2 did here. After Black Ops 2, I feel like things went downhill. Call of Duty decided to give us Ghosts. I don't think I need to say much about Ghosts. It's fine. I'm just going to kind of skip over it. It didn't really impact me much. It was just kind of meh. Like, it was there and they did something. I don't even know what they did. I feel like they talked about the dog more than anything else. That's all I remember about this game. So shout out to Ghosts. Always remember the dog. After Ghosts, we got something that changed Call of Duty forever. And that game is none other than Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. This is the game that catapulted the series into a new era, literally, because, jumping. With the introduction of advanced movement like jetpacks and exosuits, it changed the way that we played COD forever, basically. For better or worse, this game was a turning point. A little intro about Advanced Warfare. It was released in November of 2014. It was developed by Sledgehammer Games. This was the first time they made a COD game by themselves, so shout out to them. They were doing a lot of different stuff with this one, so I think overall they did a good job. The game promised innovation because of its futuristic setting, advanced movement system, and also fully customizable character design. However, it was the first COD to introduce loot boxes. And yeah, that ended up not being a very good idea. Along with the loot system also came weapon variants, each with its own unique stats and designs, which I thought was a cool idea. I liked the variants. They're fun to play around with, and obviously to get a legendary one, I think they're called Elite in this game, that was always really exciting. So that was a cool idea, but the way they went about it, I don't think was the best execution. Another big thing I feel like they were hyping up was dynamic maps, where the maps could change halfway through a game. I feel like it was just done for marketing purposes because it wasn't really used that much. It was maybe used on 2 maps, but I don't think it was groundbreaking or anything. On this one map, there came a big wave that you basically just had to get out of the area to avoid, and you'd be fine. And then on another map, there came all this toxic gas that came into the map, and you had to evacuate to a whole different area of the map. So that was pretty cool, but that was it. All the other maps were static and they're normal, so that's what I'm saying. They just wanted to market something like, wow, this is different, this is new. But in the end, it didn't really change that much. Alright, enough introducing the game. Let's start talking about the campaign. Advanced Warfare's story was, I can't say much. I don't remember. I don't think it was groundbreaking, but it got the job done. However, I will say the graphics, they were extraordinary. By far the best graphics in any Call of Duty game at that time. Another thing that they hyped up was mocap, or motion capture, and I feel like it really did make the characters feel more lifelike. I'll always remember Kevin Spacey. That's basically all I remember about the campaign was Kevin Spacey and crossing the road on that one level.
Get across the street!
So yeah, it's a little short today on the campaign side, but that's all I remember. There was Kevin Spacey, and you had to cross a road with a bunch of cars, and that was it. So the campaign didn't really leave a lasting impression on me because I don't really remember much about it, but I remember I had a good time. Alright, moving on to probably the biggest disappointment in this game, zombies. Or should I say exo-zombies. Or also, as I like to call it, the mode that I never played. I feel like it was an afterthought. Zombies wasn't even included at launch, so it was already put at a disadvantage. When it was finally introduced, it was locked behind a DLC paywall, so for me, that was a deal breaker. I'm like, I'm out. I'm not paying for this. With everything that Sledgehammer had to focus on with completely developing this game by themselves, introducing advanced movement, I feel like they didn't really think about zombies or care about it as much. They just really wanted to nail multiplayer, which, I mean, to be fair, that is the reason why people play Call of Duty. So honestly, I don't know much about zombies. I've seen a few YouTube videos of people playing it, but I can't really say much for myself. If you had fun with it, that's great. But if you didn't play it or if you didn't like it, yeah, I mean, it figures. So that's it for zombies. Alright, moving on to the crown jewel of, I guess, the entire Call of Duty franchise, because they always focus on multiplayer, and why not? That's what gets the people coming back. Multiplayer is where Advanced Warfare truly shined. The advanced movement system was polarizing, but I liked it. It was a breath of fresh air for me. Jetpacks and exosuits added a whole new skill gap, and if you didn't adapt, you were gonna be toast. Luckily for me, I'd been playing claw grip with a controller since Black Ops 2, so I was able to transition into this game pretty easily. The big advantage with claw is that you can jump and crouch and slide and do all the exosuit movements without ever taking your thumb off the aiming stick. So it was a pretty big advantage because I could jump around wherever I wanted and still aim at the enemy and shoot them in the air. And if you weren't playing that way, or if you didn't have a SCUF controller with special buttons on the back of the controller, then yeah, this game was going to be a lot tougher for you. Let's talk about the maps. I had to look up the maps because I didn't remember any of their names. I guess I remembered one. It was Solar. I don't know why I remembered Solar, but it wasn't even my favorite map. I just was like, Solar. So I looked up a list, and some of their maps sparked some memories for me, and I did have fun on them. There were maps like Biolab, Detroit, Comeback, and Solar. I will say they were fun in their own unique way, and they did a pretty good job of letting you use your exosuit movements, but none of them stood out as being iconic. They definitely did not reach the status of maps like Raid or Nuketown. I don't think I would ever find myself reminiscing about maps from Advanced Warfare. Moving on to weapons. The weapon meta was dominated by two guns, Val-27 and the ASM-1. If you weren't using these, you're probably getting destroyed. I mean, there were some other good guns, but like those were by far the two most used guns. And lucky for me, I was able to get the elite variants for both of these. I got the Bal Obsidian Steed and the ASM-1 Speakeasy, and they were so fun to use. And I can proudly say that I was able to get those without ever spending an extra penny on the game. That was honestly probably the biggest achievement that I got in this game, is not giving it any more money. So for me, I liked the variants. I think it was fun to introduce a bunch of different weapons with different stats so you can try to mix and match your playstyle. And I think the idea was fun to try to look forward to getting something and hope and pray that you'd get an elite variant. Because when you did, that feeling was incredible. I think an easy way to fix the loot boxes is to make it so that you can't spend money on them. Yes, you can still grind for them and get them organically just by playing the game and not spending any extra money like I did, but it is a lot slower, so you are at a disadvantage if you don't spend money. One thing I remember about this game is the YouTube videos that YouTubers started making where they would only open loot boxes in the video. They would spend hundreds of dollars and open like 100 loot boxes to try to get an elite variant gun, and that was the entire video. It's wild to think about that we all watched people open loot boxes and I guess hope for them to get an elite variant gun. I mean, I'm guilty. I watched them and it was exciting. You know, you can't argue with getting an elite weapon or elite piece of gear. It was dope.
Elite! Oh, baby, a triple! We did it! Oh my gosh, we did it!
So I liked the idea of loot boxes. I think they're fun. I liked the variants. It was a lot of fun to try to get them and grind for them. I just wish they didn't monetize them. That was the main problem. But of course, I mean, they are greedy, so you had to expect it. Overall, I had a lot of fun in Advanced Warfare. It was fresh and new and exciting, and the movement was cool. Also, for me, this is the game where I hit my highest KD, 1.4. So yeah, I was moving up in the world. But even with that, I feel like something was missing. And after thinking about it, I wanted to compare Advanced Warfare to junk food. It feels so satisfying and fun in the moment that you're in the game, but then later on when you leave, it didn't really leave a lasting impact. So yes, the advanced movement added a layer of skill that I personally liked a lot, but the reliance on loot boxes and the lackluster maps held it back from being truly great. So was it better than Black Ops 2 or Black Ops 1? Not a chance. But it was a good time while it lasted, and I mean, sometimes that's all you need in a game. It doesn't need to change your life. It doesn't need to leave this lasting impact that you'll remember forever. But it was fun, and that's all you need. After Advanced Warfare, something changed. Gaming had been a constant in my life for years, but eventually I just stopped. Maybe it was burnout, maybe it was the fact that life was getting busier. Whatever the reason, I put the controller down and shifted my focus elsewhere. Mainly college. College hit me like a ton of bricks. My grades, let's just say they were leaving a lot to be desired. I realized that I had to lock in and really focus on getting my grades up. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to get into the programs that I wanted to study. So that definitely took precedence, and everything else kind of went by the wayside. Between classes, studying, and just enjoying the whole college experience with hanging out with friends and different people, I ended up not having much time for gaming, or basically none at all. And if you're a big Call of Duty fan, you might be saying that this was the worst possible time for me to dip out, right when Black Ops 3 was getting released, especially because some people consider Black Ops 3 one of the greatest Call of Duty games of all time. I played the beta a little bit, but I never really got involved in the full gaming experience. But I did go back much later and I got to experience zombies. And I have to admit, zombies in Black Ops 3 was probably the greatest zombies experience out of any game. Either way, life kind of takes over and things happen. But that's okay. Life moves on and new things start to come up. And there was one game that finally brought me back to gaming. And that game was Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2019. The moment I saw the reveal trailer, I felt something that I hadn't felt in years. Pure excitement for a new game. This time though, this wasn't just a reboot. It was redefining and reimagining a brand new Modern Warfare experience. The name alone carried so much weight. Modern Warfare was back, and now bigger than ever. And I didn't know at the time, but this game wasn't just a return to form for the series. It was a whole new chapter for me back in gaming. So in the next part of this video, we're going to deep dive into Modern Warfare 2019 and Warzone. Modern Warfare 2019 was the game that redefined what Call of Duty could be, and for me, brought the franchise back into my life like I hadn't had since the good old days. This ended up not just being another Call of Duty. It was The best Call of Duty that had come out in years. From the moment they dropped the trailer with Price uttering those iconic words, I knew this one was going to be special.
Bravo 6. Going dark.
But with every year, Call of Duty will always try to build the hype train as much as they can, and they don't always deliver. So I was a little skeptical. Could they deliver on the hype? Well, let's find out. From all the interviews and events going on before the game's release, it was all about realism. I remember the developers talked a lot about making every detail authentic. They studied real military footage to nail the tactics and movements that soldiers use when clearing a building. They worked tirelessly to make the guns feel and sound as real as possible, down to the smallest details. And as a result, the game didn't just look good, it felt like the most realistic COD to date. From the weight of the weapons, the way each gun fires, down to the pacing in the missions, everything was designed to immerse you in this game. So let's start with the campaign. This campaign is by far one of the best campaigns in all of Call of Duty history. They weren't holding back. The story was raw, emotional, intense, and it brought you in like no other game could. One of the standout moments for me was playing as Farah when she was just a little girl. That mission was crazy. Watching her father get killed right in front of her, and then having to sneak around the house and hiding from the soldier to survive. It felt so intense in the moment and so scary. It felt like I was in the game. And then let's not forget that mission where you clear the house with Captain Price. I don't remember the name of it, but I think you'll know what I'm talking about. It's honestly one of the most iconic missions in all of Call of Duty. The way you had to move room by room, methodically clearing each floor, each closet, each room. It felt like you were actually there and clearing the rooms yourself. They did a really good job with tension in this game. You never knew what you were going to find behind each closed door, whether it was an enemy or whether it was a civilian that you weren't supposed to kill. I imagine the stress that these actual soldiers go through when they do things like this. That's how immersive this game feels. The characters in this game were truly legendary. Every time I played a mission with Captain Price, it felt like I wasn't just following a character around. I was working alongside him. He wasn't just barking orders. He was guiding me, teaching me, and making sure I knew he had my back. Whether it was calmly pointing out dangers ahead or leading us through the chaos, Price had unmatched aura of unwavering confidence. What made him stand out was his trustworthiness. In a world of uncertainty, I knew I could count on him. If Price was in the fight, I felt like I could handle anything because I wasn't alone. He wasn't just a character in the game, he was a teammate, and that's what made him unforgettable. Alright, let's talk multiplayer. This is where Modern Warfare truly came alive. For me, the game mode that stood out the most was Gunfight. I love Gunfight. I wish it was more popular because I could honestly play Gunfight all day long. Gunfight is pure adrenaline. It's 2v2, you have 1 life per round, no health regeneration, and you get random weapons. So the stakes could not be higher each time you drop in. It forced you to adapt on the fly and know how to use each gun in the game, as well as rely on your teammate like you never have before. The thrill of clutching around or pulling off a last-second win was truly unmatched. Some of my best memories in this game came from playing split-screen Gunfight with my college roommates. We'd stay up super late, yelling and laughing and trying to help each other out whenever one of us died. I'll never forget one night where we barely won an insanely close game around 2 a.m. and we're running around screaming in our apartment, only to hear our neighbors banging on the wall telling us to shut up. Honestly, nothing could bring us down from that moment. That was peak gaming right there. In addition to Gunfight, it wasn't always high stakes strategy. Sometimes you just needed pure, unfiltered chaos, and that's where maps like Shipment and Rust came in. Shipment, as always, is absolute madness. Bullets flying everywhere, explosions everywhere. There's no chance to catch your breath, just non-stop action. Rust is another banger that they brought back, and that map is so iconic. These maps weren't just nostalgic, they brought you back into Call of Duty what it really is. Non-stop, fast-paced gameplay. You couldn't play it all the time though, otherwise you'd probably go insane. And the graphics in this game made every map look so much better. For me, these remasters like Shipment and Rust are my favorite version of the maps. Modern Warfare 2019's engine, the graphics, everything just feels so smooth and fluid. I think this is truly how Call of Duty should be played. Modern Warfare 2019 is the perfect example of Call of Duty. It felt like a reawakening. The combination of incredible campaign storytelling, phenomenal multiplayer game modes like Gunfight, and the return of classic maps made this game feel like the golden age again. Modern Warfare 2019 was the perfect way for me to reintroduce myself back to the franchise. It reminded me why I fell in love with Call of Duty in the first place, and I'm so grateful that I got to experience this game at the peak of its popularity. So that wraps up talking about Modern Warfare 2019. Funnily enough, I still play this game to this day, and it's just as fun as I remember. But let's talk about something else that Call of Duty did that changed gaming forever. Specifically, Battle Royales. You already know what I'm talking about. It's Warzone. I will probably die on this hill, but Warzone, when it was released, was the greatest version of Warzone that ever was. And I don't think Call of Duty will ever make another Battle Royale that will match the greatness of the first Warzone that they made. Call it nostalgia, call it the good old days, call it whatever you want. But I seriously had the most fun in the first Warzone in Verdansk than I ever did in any other Battle Royale. Since I had played Call of Duty for a long time at this point, I was super excited to give Warzone a try. At the time, Fortnite was insanely popular, but I had never been drawn to Fortnite like it was to Call of Duty. I really liked the fast-paced gameplay of Call of Duty. I really liked first-person shooters, so it was hard for me to get into Fortnite. And once Warzone dropped, the floodgates were open. I was ready to have the time of my life. One thing that really stood out in Warzone compared to other battle royales at the time was the gulag system. If you died early in the game, you didn't have to back out immediately. You were put into a high-stakes 1v1 match where if you killed your opponent, you'd be back in the game and your opponent would be out. There are so many different variables that could go into why you might die early. Call it unlucky or unskilled, whatever the reason is, you always had a second chance to work your way back in. Just knowing that I had a gulag system made me feel more confident going into gunfights. I knew that even if the very worst happened and I died, I would have a second chance to get back in. So it made me more aggressive, where I wanted to push people more and I wanted to give it a shot, to push myself and stretch my abilities. And overall, I think those tendencies made me into a better player. So let's talk about other aspects of Warzone, like Verdansk, the map itself. Call of Duty was cooking when they made Verdansk. I don't know how you can reach perfection on the first try at something, but somehow they did it. Verdansk had everything you could ask for, from the insane hot drop of Superstore, or if you wanted to take it easy, you could go all the way to prison, hang out there for a bit, loot up, and then join the action. Or you could always go into the craziness of downtown and probably get sniped from a rooftop hundreds of meters away. It was truly special because I feel like it had something for everyone. Looking back at Verdansk now and seeing gameplay of it again, it really does bring back a warm nostalgia feeling. So let's talk about the looting system. Again, they nailed it first try. You didn't have a backpack to worry about. All you had to worry about were the guns, ammo, and armor. That was basically it. It was really simple. I mean, there were other things like kill streaks and other stuff, but the fundamentals were very simple, very easy, and it just made sense. And with looting, you had a choice whether you wanted to loot and try to get a gun that you wanted at a higher rarity, or you could try the new mechanic that Call of Duty introduced, custom loadouts. I go back and forth on this. I think custom loadouts were a lot of fun because you got to use the guns that you earned, whether through multiplayer or through Warzone. So you got to show off your camos that you grinded for and all the hard work that you put into getting these guns. And so you're very familiar with them and you know how they work. But on the other hand, I like the idea of using what's given to you. I feel like it shows a higher level of skill if you're able to loot on the ground or pick up guns off of people that you eliminate. It shows that you're able to adapt no matter what the situation is. So I do like that aspect. I don't know what a perfect fix would be, because I feel like in the end, everybody just saved up enough money to immediately go get their loadout as quickly as they could. So Call of Duty kind of needed to do something to balance out being over-reliant on loadouts, but still have them in the game in some way. Maybe there's some sort of middle ground, like limiting how much of your loadout you could bring in. For example, you only got to bring in one gun, and then everything else, like perks and grenades, had to be earned through looting. Or something even crazier, like say you only get to use your loadout in the next game if you placed in the top 10. Then you would definitely have more incentive to try to last as long as you could and try to win the game. And with that aspect, you definitely want to play the next game because then you could bring in a loadout. So whatever way you lean, whether more towards loadouts or looting, overall, I still think introducing loadouts was an awesome idea, and it made Warzone stand out from among all the other battle royales. And I can't forget to talk about one of my favorite aspects of Call of Duty was finally back: vehicles. I'd been waiting to have vehicles again in a Call of Duty game since Call of Duty 3, so it had been a very long time. I know that they had vehicles in Blackout, but I didn't really play Blackout. In fact, I didn't play Black Ops 4 at all. I just completely skipped that one. This was my grand return to getting vehicles back in Call of Duty, and boy, it was everything that I dreamed of. It was so much fun to load up with your friends, hop in a vehicle, whether it was a Jeep or Big Bertha, or if you could make it to downtown and out of it alive, you could get away with a helicopter. The vehicles were so much fun, and they made it so that the map didn't feel too big. Because of the vehicles, you're able to get across the map wherever you needed to be in a good amount of time. And let us not forget how deadly C4 was for vehicles. So you definitely had to get in the habit of grabbing trophy systems and making sure to throw them on top of whatever vehicle you were in. And I finally got to relive the nostalgic feeling back from Call of Duty 3 of running people over. It was just as satisfying as I remembered. One of my favorite moments in Warzone was rolling up on an enemy squad in a vehicle. So imagine this: you and your team spot a group of enemies out in the open. You're behind the wheel, teammates are hanging off both sides, shooting out of the windows, everyone's shouting at once. Meanwhile, you're flooring it, trying to line up the perfect hit to knock one of them down, but then chaos. The enemy squad starts firing back, your teammates jump out in the middle of everything, guns blazing, taking cover wherever they can find it. You're dodging RPGs, bullets, and maybe even someone trying to hit you with C4. In moments like that, that's where Warzone gets its name, because that is truly an all-out war zone. What made these moments so special was the transition. You'd start in the vehicle, using it as both a weapon and a way of getting to different places, but when the firefight got too intense, it was time to ditch the ride and take the fight on foot. So that shift from rolling in as a squad to scattering and coordinating on foot was unmatched. It kept you on your toes, and every encounter made it feel like you were literally in an action movie. So now, let's talk about the meat of Warzone, the gameplay. When Modern Warfare 2019 came out, it brought something special to Call of Duty, and the gameplay mechanics set the foundation for why Warzone felt so good. The game engine, the gunplay, the movement, it all just clicked. Every shot felt powerful, every gun felt responsive, and the flow of the game was as smooth as butter. That's why this version of Warzone stands out more than any other. There was something about the way the mechanics worked together that made it feel so natural. The guns weren't just tools, they were fun to use. Whether you were rocking an SMG for close quarters, or a sniper, or my personal favorite, the Growl, every weapon felt like it had weight and impact. But what really made Warzone fun wasn't just the mechanics, it was the moments you shared with your friends. Deciding whether to hot drop into chaos or play it safe and loot up was always a debate. And let's be honest, we usually went for the hot drop, and it basically never worked out for us. But that was part of the fun. It wasn't just about surviving, it was about the experience. laughing at the ridiculous moments, arguing about one of your friends pushing a squad by themselves, and celebrating when one of your teammates clutched a gulag. It was all a part of what made Warzone so memorable for me. Every time I dropped in with my friends, I feel like there was this unspoken hope that we had. Like, this is the one. This is the match we're going to win. And most of the time, we didn't win. It would end up in disappointment. But on those rare occasions when we actually pulled off the win, the adrenaline, the intensity in those final moments when it's down to just you and one other team, and your hands are shaking and you can't aim straight, and the chaos of those final moments, it made all the losses worth it. Overall, Warzone brought this sense of camaraderie with my friends that I might never get to experience in a video game again. The laughs, the clutches, the teamwork, and even all the failures, they all added up to something unforgettable. And that's why the first version of Warzone will always stand out to me. After Warzone, I found myself stepping away from gaming once again. It just wasn't hitting the same. Life got busier and coordinating with friends became a lot harder. And even when I did find time to play, the changes that Call of Duty was making, especially with Caldera, it made Warzone a lot less enjoyable. The spark of Modern Warfare 2019 that brought me back had faded. And for a while, I kind of lost interest in all games. I didn't really think there was a game that would pique my interest again. Competitive shooters had been my life for so long now up to this point, and without them, I didn't think there was like a different genre that was for me. But eventually, there was a game that finally grabbed my attention. And it wasn't Call of Duty. It wasn't a high-intensity competitive shooter either. It was something completely different, something that reminded me of my early childhood gaming days. That game is none other than Portal. Portal reignited that fire in me again. It wasn't just about competition or winning. It was about problem solving, creativity, and experiencing something unique. This game challenged me in ways that I hadn't felt in years, and suddenly, I was hooked again. It wasn't about grinding multiplayer or chasing leaderboards. This time, it was something deeper. And that was just the beginning. But unfortunately, before I go on, that's going to be the end of this video. Aww. I know, it's sad. I really wanted to make a big, long video, but I've reached a point where there are a few games that I want to talk about, but I haven't quite finished yet. I want to get to the end to experience the game fully so I can talk about them and have a full and complete understanding. So this video is only part one of the story. You know, I walked you through the very beginning of my introduction to video games, where I really liked and enjoyed single player games, and then how I grew up and I really got sucked into multiplayer games and I thought those were the best things ever, and then where I'm at now in playing these single player games that are iconic, and I can't wait to talk about them. I just need to finish a few that I'm trying to get through. So I'll make a new video dedicated entirely to all of these single player games that brought me back and reignited my love in games again. So if you've made it all the way to the end of this video, I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Seriously, this is my first big attempt at making a video like this, and I set the bar a little bit too high probably because this was a huge undertaking that I didn't quite expect how long this would take. I put in so many hours into this, so if you enjoyed this video at all, please consider hitting like and subscribe. That would mean so much to me. It would really help me out a lot, and I want to make more. I want to grow this channel and just share my love of gaming with all of you. So with that said, I am working on part 2. I really want to show you guys what that looks like. And you know, this whole channel, this whole thing is just a big passion project for me because I do have a 9-to-5 job, and obviously that takes up the majority of my time. So working on this in the late hours or in the early hours has been challenging, but it's been so rewarding and so much fun to finally put, you know, something like this all together. Again, any support that you can give to this video goes a really long way, and I really and truly appreciate it. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.
taper fade. You know what's crazy is that low taper fade like meme is, dude, it is still massive.